Welcome in. What's Right with Nick Wright, episode 290. Playoffs are here. Finished the year profitable gambling, even though week 18 didn't, kind of out with a bit of a whimper, if I must say. Lost the season-long picks contest to Parkins by 1 pick. Our picks here deserved 2 and 3, ended up being 1, 3 and 1. So not a great final week. Also, speaking of gambling, before we get to it, did you see gambling Twitter, Damonza, just drag me all week because of my populist opinion that, hey, let's try to claw some of this money back from the sports books for the refund your bets if you have an overtime underdog?
Yeah, they came at you for that?
Unanimously. And the amount of bootlicking these fake gambling touts were like, so what do you want the sports, treating the sports book like they're the soup kitchen. Listen here. I like a lot of America's sports books. And as I told you last week, I'm going to be partnering with one of them here in the next few weeks. Not sure which one again. Have your people talk to my people. We'll see if we can work something out. And while I will partner with them and they are providing a service, I want to make something very clear. It's the public against the house, and I'm on the side of the public. Yeah, I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not rooting for, I don't know anything about Star Wars, but the Emperor Palpatine. Is that a good reference? I'm not sure. The idea that how many people were like, that would be so unfair to the sports book. Huh? Unfair to the sport. Good. That's the goal here. They can just give us a little, my goodness gracious, folks. Yes, obviously, that would be do these people go to casinos and look at a roulette wheel that only has 1 0 and are like, probably should throw 2 on there. And in fact, some places put 3 zeros on there. Walking through the pits, and they're like, excuse me, casino manager. I know it says blackjack pays 3-2, but a lot of places these days are doing 6-5, and people still pay it. Like, what are you doing rooting for the sports book? And I got to deal with, again,
just don't
these
like you.
fake these kids who have been alive for a shorter period of time than I've been gambling, like Kelly in Vegas and her just sycophantic tribe of morons being like, oh my God, did this guy just learn about gambling? Guys, there's a lot of things you can come after me for. A lot of things. Pretty fairly. There's slings and arrows that I leave myself open to. Trying to stake out the corner of Nick Wright hasn't been gambling long enough to know the rules when I'm 40 years old and I have been gambling, not for a living, but as a way to make or in many times lose money that was my weekly income since I was 11. I don't think that you coming to me and being like,
wait,
and by the way, what? Go ahead.
What
you're
you
confused about?
What were you betting on? Amongst your friends?
Well, so I real quick, then we'll get to football. Started playing poker when I was 9, and with family and friends with my grandparents, and then not poker with my dad, and then when I was 11. We got a small bar-sized pool table, and my dad, I've told this story before, my dad played me in 9-ball, $5 on the 9, $2 on the 5, and I ran up a $40 worth of wins. He then was like, all right, you got to give me a chance to get even. Let's up the stakes. I was 11, so I didn't realize I was in the midst of the oldest hustle in the book. I said yes. I left the basement that night owing my father $108. And I was 11, and he made me pay it. He wrote up a contract and said, you'll pay me $10 a month for the next year. And I was like, even though I was 11, I was like, $10 a month for a year. That's 120. I owe you 108. He's like, yeah, I'm only charging you 10% interest, and you're going to have to find a way to pay me. He thought that the lesson I was going to take from that is gambling is risky and don't do it. The lesson I took from it was you can make a lot of money gambling if you know what you're doing. So yeah. I just then ran that exact same hustle on my friends in my basement for years, and I won so many video games. We would play for each other's video games. Like, you didn't have cash. Like, you get a video game for Christmas, we'd play for that. We played for basketball cards, all this stuff. And my dad, by the way, again, is statute of limitations. I've maybe told this story, I maybe haven't. People see I look a lot like my father, but he doesn't have the nose I have. Yeah. And the reason he doesn't have the nose I have is because in his youth, when he was a pool hustler, again, I didn't know this when I was playing him, he hustled a guy in the, inners of Kansas City, and the guy broke his nose with the pool cue. And so when you get your nose broken, you get it fixed. Sorry, Pops, but it's been 60 years since that happened to you. I feel like I can tell that story. So again, I'm not trying to throw out all my gambling bona fides, but it was 2003, and I was on South Salina Street in Syracuse playing in a poker game with Albanians. Like, the idea that I need to be lectured on how gambling works from idiots on the internet. I know how it works. And guess what, folks? It's hard to win. So let's try to just get a little bit of juice back for us. Okay.
It was just.
I feel better. This is why you shouldn't read the comments on the internet. There's a lot of reasons why, but this is one of them. I was blissfully unaware. I was getting absolutely annihilated. And then Danny, my old buddy Danny Parkins, says to me, he's like, oh, man, gambling Twitter's really coming after you. And I'm like, they are? And I look, and I'm like, God dog it, they sure are. All right, here's what missed the cut. The Bears are interested in Mike McCarthy. The Giants aren't making any changes. Why would they? They're a mess. And Trevor needs a new head coach. I want to say one thing about the Trevor thing. Keeping Trent Baalke makes me so sad for Trevor. His ability to keep his job is unprecedented. He won a power struggle with the Niners against Jim Harbaugh. And now he can hire Urban Meyer, hire Doug Peterson, and is going to get to hire another coach. There was a hilarious moment, though, in the Zoom, the media Zoom, split screen like this, Damonza, between the owner of the Jaguars, Shad Khan, and Trent Baalke, where Shad Khan is like, we're going to keep, Trent in place, blah, blah, blah. And somebody asked him a question, and he's like, what if the new head coach wants you to replace the general manager? And again, Trent is on the Zoom, and Shad Khan says, he's like, well, if the person we decide on for the new head coach, really believes we need a new general manager, then I would make that change. And again, a sign the Jags might not know what they're doing. My guess is Trent Baalke, who gets to interview the new head coaches, one of the questions are going to be, so you're going to replace me? Because if you are, I got to say, I don't think you're getting this job. All right, let's get to the show. One seed's locked. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Detroit locked up their bye with the win against Minnesota, and now Detroit is Super Bowl favorites. Do you consider them the biggest threat to your Chiefs, them being Super Bowl favorites, or is it somebody else?
No, it's the Bills. It's been the Bills all year, and I didn't get everything right in the preseason, but this was one of them, that the Bills were way, way, way undervalued by the world, and that they were still going to be excellent. And so here's why I think. Tell me because I tried to explain this on the show yesterday, but I don't know if I did a good job of explaining it, or maybe I did do a good job, but it's just my co-hosts aren't as big of gamblers as I am, so it didn't really translate. I said that even though Detroit right now is the favorite to win the Super Bowl, I think that if Detroit played Kansas City in the Super Bowl, Kansas City would be the Vegas favorite. So how do you square those two ideas? And my rationale was, I think what Vegas believes, Detroit is more likely to win the NFC than the Chiefs are to win the AFC. That that Detroit's path is cleaner because I would imagine right now, after Detroit and Kansas City, the two biggest Super Bowl public picks are the Bills and the Ravens. And Kansas City is going to have to go through, in all likelihood, one of those teams. And so I don't look at the Lions as the biggest threat. And I do want, listen, I thought the Lions were going to lose that football game, and they played great. They played great. And listen, Terry and Arnold got hurt. That's another defensive injury. And I know folks saw how they played against Sam Darnold and said, well, what more do you want from them? Like, it doesn't matter they had all these injuries. Look at how great they were. I do not think that specific defensive approach, which I'll explain in a moment, will work against great quarterbacks, which was, we're just sending the house, man. We are just sending the house again and again and again. They blitzed over 60% of the plays in that game. Darnold did not handle it well, and the Vikings offense couldn't function because of it. The last thing, historically speaking, great quarterbacks love being blitzed because they get man-to-man coverage. They can usually diagnose it before the snap, and they know where the ball's going. Now, Detroit's in a unique spot where they could make the Super Bowl and never have to play a great quarterback. Because the NFC, in my opinion, only has one, and that's Matt Stafford. And Stafford is an underdog in round 1 to Minnesota. But in the Super Bowl, I don't think that will work against Patrick Mahomes. I also don't think that would work against Josh Allen. And if you're playing the Ravens in the Super Bowl, it means Lamar, definitionally, has gotten over his playoff bugaboos. Because to get to the Super Bowl for Lamar, it is Steelers, then Josh Allen, then Patrick Mahomes, assuming the bracket holds. If he does all of that, then the Lamar postseason questions are answered. So for Detroit, I give them massive credit for what they've accomplished, and Dan Campbell taking that team from 3 wins to 9 wins to 12 wins to 15 wins is remarkable. Truly remarkable. And I think they are good enough whole to win the Super Bowl. And listen, maybe even with all these injuries, they'll just outscore people and they'll be able to do it. But what they did Sunday night, to me, was not sustainable against the type of quarterback they're going to have to beat to win a Super Bowl. But it was very sustainable, Damonza, against Sam Darnold, and I know you have a Darnold question.
Yeah. Do you think that Darnold played himself out of a contract with that performance, and it's the first big game of the season?
I think if he does it again, yeah. So here's what is simultaneously awesome and so cruel about sports, but really this sport, the NFL. Because I get annoyed at times when people dismiss playoff performances or really anything in the NFL with this. It's small sample size. Because it's a small sample size sport. You're not going to get the 500 at-bats you get in baseball. You're not going to get a 7-game series you get in basketball. You get a game, a couple games. That's the nature of the sport. And Darnold went into Sunday night. So if we just go backwards 40 hours, Sam Darnold had sitting in front of him this. If I play great tonight, we get the 1 seed. I basically guarantee myself $100 million and have a real chance to win the Super Bowl. Instead, he had his worst game of the year. And now he goes into his first career playoff game knowing if I play terribly again, I'm just Sam Darnold again. And that, again, that might be unfair, but that's why football is so great, is because it is a little unfair, and so it's so captivating to watch. And if he plays poorly, he's never played in a playoff game. So it is not an exaggeration at all to say Sunday night was the biggest game of his career by a mile. Yeah. And now the biggest game of his career is this weekend. Monday night. He can save it, but if he plays poorly and they lose, I do not believe Minnesota's giving him a long-term contract. Maybe they franchise tag him, or maybe someone else, wants to trade for him and give him the contract, but it's now up in the air in a way it otherwise wouldn't have been. We have some breaking news. The Titans have fired their GM, Ran Carthon. Listen, real quick on that, they brought in, let me get the exact time on this correct, because this is breaking news. So they brought in Ran Carthon from San Francisco a couple years ago. And his first big move, is that right? Hold on. Wasn't the January of 23? So hold on, was that not his first big move? I thought his first big move was the A.J. Brown trade. Do I just have that wrong? So I want to be fair here. Hold on. So yeah, I do have that wrong. So who the hell traded A.J. Brown?
A.J.
So Ran Carthon got there in January of 23. Who was the GM there before? John Robinson. So that's what happened. Okay, so this is where I had it in my head. My apologies. And I'm glad I checked that, because that would have been bad. John Robinson traded A.J. Brown. It infuriated Mike Vrabel. And basically, I think because there was that severing of a relationship between Vrabel and John Robinson, they picked Vrabel. They then brought in Ran Carthon, and it didn't seem like Ran Carthon and Vrabel were ever exactly aligned. And in that instance, they went with Ran, and now that does look like it was a mistake, because Vrabel is probably the hottest coaching candidate this side of Ben Johnson, and they just decided to move on from Ran Carthon. But that's a short tenure, man. January of 23 to January of 25 as a GM. Usually GMs get more time than head coaches. We're not, and now they're in, this is the spot you don't want to be in, and the reason, just for a moment, the reason to defend the Giants bringing both guys back, Shane and Dable, I don't like it. I probably would have fired both of them. But what you don't want to do is fire one and then have your GM and head coach not aligned. And now that's exactly what the Titans are going to have. The Titans are now going to hire a general manager. And that general manager is going to say, well, I didn't pick Brian Callahan, the head coach. It's not I want my head coach. And so now Brian Callahan goes into next year where the GM isn't his guy. And so that part is that usually that misalignment doesn't work out so well. And so, but the Titans, I don't know what happened. I don't know why they waited a day. But they have fired Ran Carthon. All right, Damonza, let's move on.
So the regular season's wrapping up, or it's wrapped up, and ballots are due. Who would your picks be for MVP, Offensive Defensive Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year?
Okay, so listen. Bengals fans would tell you they should sweep the board. Bengals fans think they have the league MVP in Joe Burrow, the Offensive Player of the Year, Mr. Triple Crown Jamar Chase, and the Defensive Player of the Year, the sack champion Trey Hendrickson. I would say if you have the three best players in the league, probably should not need the Chiefs' help to make the playoffs. So those wouldn't be my picks. My MVP pick, and again, Wild said it exactly right. There is no argument for Patrick Mahomes to be the MVP except for the fact that he's the league's most valuable player. That's really the only argument for Mahomes this year to be MVP is that he is actually the most valuable player in football. But of course, that's not good enough. So it's not Mahomes. I thought that if Darnold or Goff were awesome Sunday night, they would have the winner. If they were awesome and they won, that guy at 15-2 for an award that's become quarterback only would have to get real consideration. Darnold was terrible. Goff was not that good. And so they're both out. So it really just is Lamar and Josh. And everyone seems to be trying to equivocate on why, it should be Josh over Lamar. I have less of a problem with it. To me, it is very, very simple. I think that they were both outstanding this year. They both led their teams to division championships. Josh didn't have Derrick Henry, and Josh hasn't won one. So I'd give it to Josh. And if people are like, oh, it's not like people seem to be uncomfortable with the idea that one guy having 2 and the other guy having 0 should play a factor in this, but it always has. If it's really, really close on awards, I don't care if it's the Golden Globes, the Oscars, MVP, the Cy Young, any of it. If it's really, really close and one guy's won it a couple times and the other guy's never won it, then the guy who's never won it gets the nod. So, and the other reasoning is the entire rationale behind Lamar winning it last year is the rationale for Josh winning it this year. Didn't have the most eye-popping numbers, but did more with less. The team won 13-plus games, that was excellent in the biggest spots. So he gets it, to me. And also, the only reason we don't have right now a team going for a three-peat while also being undefeated is because of what Josh Allen did on that 4th-and-2 play. Now, you can say, well, the Chiefs ended up losing twice. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think they would have played their JV roster had they been going for a Super Bowl. Or I'm sorry, going for an undefeated season. Which also, I didn't even think about this. This just occurred to me in real time. This would be the ultimate pain for Bills fans. Did the Bills beating the Chiefs this year increase the Chiefs' chances of beating the Bills in the playoffs again? Because it removed the incentive to play guys in week 17 or week 18 and potentially have guys get banged up because they were going for an undefeated season against what would have been a desperate Broncos team. Maybe, I don't know. But so Josh would be my MVP.
Well,
is Lamar? Go ahead.
Yeah, Josh, you're saying Josh Allen will be your MVP. Is Lamar at plus 320? Is that enough to get you to at least bet on that?
No, because I think that I think Josh is an overwhelming favorite to win it. So I don't, and it's not the type of bet where it's like, oh, like the odds aren't going to change very much from now to then. And so, no, I would have Josh 1. And one other thing about Lamar winning it last year with pretty pedestrian numbers, but all the intangible stuff that Josh has this year. It was a rout. 50 voters, 49 first place votes for Lamar. So it wasn't close in the end. All year long, we thought it was going to be close, and then the voters kind of herded to Lamar. So Josh would be my MVP. Saquon would be my offensive player of the year. Offensive rookie of the year. Brock Bowers has an awesome case. He was the best tight end in football this year, not for rookies, but for tight ends. But it's got to be Jaden Daniels. Defensive rookie of the year has to be Jared Verse, my preseason pick. And then defensive player of the year in a weird year where Pat Surtain is the overwhelming favorite. People are going to say I'm a homer. I don't care. It should be Chris Jones. Because according to the Pro Bowl ballot, and I assume the upcoming All-Pro team, the Chiefs have one great defensive player, Chris Jones. They have no other defensive Pro Bowlers. None. It's just Chris. And yet, going into Week 18, they had the number 1 scoring defense in football. So, if you only have one great defensive player and you have one of the best defenses in football, and TJ Watt doesn't deserve it this year, I don't think Hendrickson deserves it when he was on a terrible defense, I would say Chris Jones. Chris Jones isn't going to win it, though. All right, let's go to the playoff dark horse stuff, Damonza.
So the playoff bracket locked. Let's take a look ahead at some teams that might be able to make some noise. With how the seeding fell, which one of those lower tier teams could you see making a big splash in the playoffs?
So listen, this isn't going to shock anybody, but my answer is the Rams. I think the Rams are going to beat the Vikings, and the Rams played Detroit in the playoffs last year. It was a 1-point game. They played Detroit week 1 of this year. It went to overtime. And so
Baker?
Baker's oddly no, but Baker's not a lower seed. They're the 3 seed. I think when we say lower seed, we're talking 4 through 7. So that removes Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Detroit, Philly, Tampa. And let's throw that bracket back up there. I think Green Bay is going to lose in round 1. And I don't think that Pittsburgh, the Broncos, the Chargers, or the Texans have much of a chance of doing anything. And so, to me, it is the Rams clearly as
Green Bay
the
out
one.
Round 1. I think they're going to make out of that.
You think they're going to beat Philly?
I do think they're going to beat Philly. But I think that's just
if
because
they do,
I'm thinking of how Philly was last year. But I think implode.
that and Jalen Hurts, they seem pretty confident he's going to clear concussion protocol, but he hasn't played a full game since week 15.
Right.
Week 16, he got knocked out early, missed 17 and 18. So there is that factor for it. Green Bay winning would really fluster the bracket and that's what they did last year as the 7 seed. They beat the 2 seed and then they, went to the 1 seed San Francisco because the NFL playoffs reseeds. So I'm thinking the Rams win, the bracket holds, and then they go get Detroit. But if Green Bay were to win, then Green Bay gets Detroit, and the Rams get the winner of Washington-Tampa. So that's what you're looking, if you're watching on YouTube, what you're seeing is a potential bracket. But just remember, in the NFL, the way it'll work is Detroit and Kansas City will play whomever the lowest seeded winner is, and then the other 2 teams play each other. So as a for instance, let's just say Pittsburgh were to beat Baltimore, then Kansas City gets Pittsburgh. if Buffalo beats Denver. Like, so the way it is set up is it'll be 2 versus 3, and then the 1 seed against the winner of the 4-5. But if 2 or 3 get upset, then that kind of changes the bracket. It's also why you can't really do an NFL playoff bracket March Madness style, because if you get, you have to get everything in round 1 right in order to know who's playing who. And so you can't really, game it out that way. All right, let's go
The
on
Rams.
to. You have a Rams question.
Well, yeah, you said the Rams are the team you picked. What did you think about them not caring about their seeding in that last week there?
Yeah, so I understand it. They're an old team that is one version of themselves on offense when healthy and a totally different version when not. Stafford has not been playing his best football as of late. He's the oldest quarterback in these playoffs, and they determined that they would rather, roll the dice on being the 3 or the 4 seed versus having guys be banged up. And so I have no problem with it whatsoever. I also think the Rams are a dangerous team, man. They've won 9 of their last 11. They started 1-4 and finished the year. Well, they won 9 of their last 11 prior to week 18 when they weren't playing their guys. I think that is a legitimately dangerous team, even though they scored 44 on Buffalo, Damonza, and then in their next 3 games, they won 12-6, 19-9,
Their games
and
are ugly.
13-9. They scored 44 against Buffalo and then 44 combined in their next 3. All right, let's go to the last topic of the segment.
So the team to beat in the AFC will not be able to be beaten in the next month and a half. They obviously missed the playoffs. And this is back-to-back years now that they've missed the playoffs, Cincinnati. What are they going to do there? What's the plan?
I don't know. I would recommend they stop talking shit. That's the first thing I'd recommend. The second thing I'd recommend is they recognize September counts. And they can't keep getting off to these brutal starts and then just thinking we'll get hot at the end of the year. And it is now a undeniable trend that has cost them repeatedly. As great as Joe Burrow is, he's been there 5 years. They've been to the playoffs twice. His rookie year, we want to throw that out, totally understand, but they started the year 1-5-1. His second year, was the 1 year they didn't start terrible, but they started the year 2-3. His third year, they started 0-2 and started the year 2-3. Last year, they started 0-2 and they started the year 2-3. This year, they started 0-3 and they started the year 1-4. Like, those are too big of holes to pull yourself out of repeatedly. And, them's the breaks, guys. And would it have been fun to see them in the playoffs? Sure. But even when their season was on the line, 2 weeks ago, they went to overtime with a decent but not great Denver team. And a couple days ago, they needed Russell Wilson to totally have a game management meltdown to escape with a win against a floundering Pittsburgh team. They're not a juggernaut. Juggernauts don't go 9-8. Juggernauts don't need help in Week 18 to make the playoffs. And so, what, Damonza?
It's the defense. I mean, I think they're playing. They obviously play well, but I think there's the answer. Plug some of those.
I mean,
holes up.
it's the defense. They also did score 19 points in Week 18 in the game they had to win. And, Burrow wasn't great in that game. They were able to win it. And, but I don't think Higgins is going to be back, and I think that team doesn't have great coaching. They just fired Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator. Like, this is a long, tough offseason that they earned by losing to the damn Patriots in week 1. Like, just get your shit together, guys. Don't lose to the Patriots in week 1, and you're not in this position. Quick break, right back. What's right? Welcome back in. What's right with Nick Wright? All right, the regular season's over, Damonza, so we can do a bit of a year-end recap before we get on to the postseason. So take over.
Yeah, so it's the end of the year. You finished 48, 40, and 2 on your regular season bets. Let's take a look at how your preseason bets went. Do you want me to just go? Oh, yeah, there we go.
No, I'll go through it. So I crushed win totals, did not do as well on the other ones. So we'll go. My overs were as follows. The Chiefs over 11.5. They won 15 games. So that was an easy one. The Rams over 8.5. They won 10 despite resting their guys the final week. The Broncos over 5.5. They won 10. So those, not only did those all win, those were all locked weeks ago. The Bears over 8.5 was locked out weeks ago. That was a bad one. The unders. The Jets under 9.5. They won 5 games. That was locked weeks ago. The Raiders under 6.5. They got red hot at the end of the year. Still never sniffed it. That was locked weeks ago. The Giants under 6.5. They won a game at the end of the year. That was locked weeks ago. And Philly under 10.5. That was a disaster. So those, we did 8 preseason win totals. The 6 winners we had were winners December 1st. Like, those were not even close. Now is when we get to the sketchier piece of it. Division winner bets. One great one that covered a lot of us elsewhere. The Rams plus 300 was a great bet. The Bears plus 340, terrible. Cincinnati plus 165, terrible. I kind of split Dallas and Washington plus 175 and plus 1100. Remember, I put like a quarter unit on Washington. Obviously, Philly won that. And then my division winner parlay, Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati. And again, this is a lesson for folks. Getting Cincinnati wrong cost me 13 units. My Cincinnati division winner bet, I didn't lose 13 units, but having it
parlay, the regular,
right, and I would have won that parlay, but whatever. But again, so let me pull it up exactly here for a second, because our graphics guy, for the guy that does, Zach, who does our graphics for, I'm going to post this shortly, for social. So my preseason win totals, if you include the VIG and everything, I bet 9.9 units. I won 13.8 units. So basically plus 4 units there. My division champion win totals, because those weren't all full unit bets, I bet 3 full units, because those were mostly half or 1 unit bets, I won 2.2, so I lost basically 1 unit there. Now we get to the playoff bets, and some good and some bad here. I had the Jets to miss the playoffs, that was a winner. Miami to miss the playoffs, that was a winner. Philly to miss the playoffs, that was a loser. But those were all plus money, so that was really good. And this is what was really bad. My biggest bet of the year was this Giants, Raiders, Saints, Steelers bet, plus 200. That was a 3-unit bet, if you remember. Giants missed by a mile. Vegas missed by a mile. New Orleans missed by a mile. But Pittsburgh not only didn't miss, because when I made it, I said if it's close, if one of these teams looks like they could make it, then I could simply, hedge my way out of it to a degree, bet them to make it late in the year when it's close. That opportunity never presented itself because Pittsburgh started 10-3. So they were always like minus a huge number to make the playoffs. So that was a bad one. So I have a no hedging rule on any bet that I make, with the exception of a bet that I make with the purpose of potentially hedging. So let me give you an example of what I mean there. If you see a team that you do not think can win the Super Bowl, but you think at some point, rather than do it without proper nouns, I'll try to think. So let me go to the current NBA odds, and we can explain it maybe a little bit better. So, gosh darn it. So let me just check the NBA champion odds. So right now, a good example would be, so let's say, Damonza, so the Rockets right now are 44-1 to win the championship. I do not think the Rockets can win the championship. But if I do believe that they have a really good chance of making the conference finals, okay, I might bet the Rockets to win the championship with the express purpose of, if and when they make the conference finals, hedging out of it. Yeah, betting exactly right. Like that, if a team's 44-1 right now, and I think there's a good chance that at some point they're 10-1, I might make that bet just for hedging purposes. Now, again, this missed the playoffs bet is not exactly that, because I thought I could win that bet, but I also thought if I'm making a 3-unit bet that I would have a chance to lock in a profit. But again, Pittsburgh was too good. These other 2 bets were not full units. They were kind of lottery tickets. Green Bay, Jets, Philly all missed the playoffs. That was 17-1. That obviously was a disaster. And then this one, Kansas City, Buffalo, Rams, Chicago to make the playoffs. That was 7-1. Chicago, 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 doesn't pay on parlays, which is totally fair. So, again, on those, I bet 6.8 units. I won 4.7, so I lost 2.1. And then my 2 Super Bowl bets, which are annual lottery tickets, Kansas City versus the Bears and Kansas City to beat the Bears. Those were disasters. So, the way the full thing plays out, believe it or not, I bet 21.7 units, Damonza, on our preseason bets. I got back 20.7. So that was a 15-minute explanation about how I lost 1 unit. I mean, and that is like, and so it just, we did all that. We did the whole preseason gambling show, and at the end of the day, minus 1 unit, which, considering the fact that I was minus 2 units on my 65-1 and 95-1 Super Bowl exactas, means I did pretty good. I basically broke even with a couple lottery tickets, so I don't mind it. All right, let's get to, now that we've recapped that, let's get to our game today, this or that.
Yeah, so we're playing this or that today, but there's going to be a small twist on it. So since there's a lot of stories
Okay.
circulating right now, I'm going to go off with 2 topics, and you just decide which one of you want to talk about. From there, we know you'll probably hit on both. Yeah, so after Miami's season ended, Tyreek Hill said, "I'm opening the door. I'm out, bro." Meanwhile, Mike Evans cracked 1,000 yards for the 11th straight season with a little help. Would you rather discuss Tyreek Hill or Mike Evans?
The Mike Evans thing was awesome, but I'd rather discuss Tyreek Hill because I think it's fun to discuss where he could end up. So, the team that I could see if they lose to the Chiefs again, trying to make a play for him, is Buffalo. But I don't think Miami would trade him within the division. So that would make a lot of sense. He would be unbelievable there. They need a field stretcher, but I don't think Miami would do it. There is no AFC North team that makes sense to me. There is no AFC South team that makes sense to me because Houston's the only one that Tyreek would potentially want to go to, and they have their receivers. I wonder if the Chargers would be interested. The Broncos theoretically could be interested, but again, if you're a team that doesn't have a great quarterback and you just saw Tyreek kind of napalm his way out of Miami, you probably don't want to get in that business. So the Chargers would be the highest on the list of potential AFC teams. NFC teams, the Cowboys make a ton of sense, and Micah's already recruiting him. And the Commanders, Damonza, with your guy Jaden, make a ton of sense. Those are really the only NFC teams. The Eagles have their receivers. The Lions have their receivers. The Vikings have their receivers. The Packers have their receivers. The Bears have their receivers. Tampa has their receivers. The Rams have their receivers. The Niners have their receivers. And again, I only think a contender would trade for Tyreek. So I say Chargers, Cowboys, Commanders are the most likely destinations for next year. And people might be like, why didn't you mention the Chiefs? The Chiefs are not trading for Tyreek Hill at his salary. They're just not. They made the choice to move off the super expensive receiver, and they've won every Super Bowl played since then. Now, with that said, what I think is going to happen is someone's going to trade for him. It's not going to go great. And in 2026, he'll be a Chief again. 2025, somewhere else. And 2026, he'll be a Chief again. That's my guess.
Put him over there in Carolina, man. They'll make Bryce Young and them instant contenders next year.
Tyreek doesn't want to go to Carolina, man. I mean, it would be he doesn't want to do it. That's just not going to happen. All right, next.
So the top of the draft order is set, and it looks different from a week ago. Would you rather discuss New England blowing the number 1 pick or Tennessee getting the number 1 pick?
Well, the only interesting thing about the Patriots blowing the number 1 pick is this. Folks acting like the Chiefs are the first team in NFL history to rest guys in Week 18 when literally earlier that day, the Bills put on such an epic tank job that they lost to a team that didn't want to win, that had only won 3 games all year and was playing its third-string quarterback, and that just gets lost in the ether. And so Tennessee getting the number 1 pick, I mean, they probably draft Cam Ward, maybe Shador, but it seems like Vegas thinks it'll be Cam Ward, and they hope they get it right. Like, Tennessee is one of the more hopeless and least interesting teams in the league. And so you hope they get the quarterback right. It was never going to be Will Levis, and Titans fans who were so mouthy this offseason because the Titans did go for it.
Wait.
They signed, you know what I mean? They spent a lot of money in free agency. They traded for L'Jarius Sneed. By the way, what a great trade by Brett Veach. Veach had a whole list of teams offering third-round picks for L'Jarius Sneed. He took the Titans because he anticipated the Titans might be terrible. They end up being the worst team in the league this year. And now the Chiefs, they don't actually get the first pick of the third round because that actually rotates. But they now have the second pick of the third round because he took the best possible trade that you could get for Snead. So the Chiefs are going to draft 32, well, assuming they win the Super Bowl, obvious. They're going to draft 32, 64, and 66, which I like quite a bit. All right, next.
Aaron Rodgers entered the 500 touchdown club and may have played his final game in the NFL. Caleb Williams wrapped up his first year with the Bears winning Green Bay since 2015. Would you rather discuss Rodgers' potential final season or Caleb's rookie season?
I'd rather, I'll be honest. I'd rather not talk about either of these right now. Feel like I've talked about these two quarterbacks a lot. I love Caleb, and I'm glad it ended on a high note, but we're going to spend a lot of time talking Caleb and the Bears once they decide on their head coach, because that's the most consequential decision this franchise will make over the next decade is who this head coach is, and Rodgers I'm just sick of talking about. All right, last one.
Fair enough. Week 18 was not the most exciting week ever. Felt like most of the league was resting their guys, and most games didn't matter. Are we sure we need 17 games when your Chiefs were demolished 38-0 by the Broncos? Which disgrace would you rather discuss, Week 18 or your Chiefs?
I mean, Week 8, the Chiefs game went exactly the way you'd hope for, which is nobody got hurt. So I don't really like the Chiefs thing's irrelevant. Here's the thing about Week 18. And nobody has put it quite this simply, but this is the best way to think about it. The more games in a season, the more likely the final game's meaningless. And the NFL opted to extend the season, which means it's more likely you have a lot of Week 18s like the one you just saw, where a lot of teams are locked into where they are. And again, sometimes things like this are the easiest to think about if you just go max min. If the NFL season were one game long, then the final week of the season would always be meaningful for every single team because it would be your entire season, right? And if the NFL season were 100 games long, then for a lot of teams, the final 6 weeks of the season might be totally meaningless, and for most teams, the final game of the season would be. You'd be locked in. If it was still a 16-game season, how many teams were 100% locked into their playoff position in Week 16? The answer to that is one, the Houston Texans. That was it. They had already clinched the division, and they couldn't go higher than 4. So they would have been the only team resting guys. You extend it 1 week, the Chiefs are locked in, the Bills are locked in, the Eagles are locked in, the Rams are locked in a band and they don't care as much. The Commanders and Packers are locked in a band and they don't care as much. Like, that's what you get. Like, that's just how it works. So it is, and if you go to 18 games, you'll get even more of it. So just be careful what you wish for on that front. Quick break, answer some listener questions next. What's right? Welcome back in. What's right with Nick Wright, Damonza? Let's go to some listener questions.
Austin says, do you think that the 49ers quarterback contract could be the inflection point for the teams to not feel obligated to play quarterbacks that are not top 10 players and just go to the draft that year? Oh, Jesus Christ.
So to not pay quarterbacks that are not top 10 guys. I doubt it, but it would be interesting. This is the thing Barnwell's talked about for years, I've talked about, which is will a team not in the position the Niners are in, will a team ever do the following? Let's say that team's the Niners. Brock Purdy, we're not paying you. You have a year under contract, you're going to play it out. And then next year, we're trading you for a first-round pick to a team that wants to pay you, and we're just going to stay on the rookie contract quarterback cycle until we hit on a no-doubt superstar. What we're not doing is paying a mid-tier quarterback top-tier money. Nobody's been willing to do that. And I don't think the Niners are going to do it, but I think it would be the smart thing to do. All right, Damonza, Tyler's got a question for you. Who do you trust more in these playoffs, Jaden Daniels or Jordan Love? I know you're the Jordan Love guy, so I was curious.
Yeah, I got to go with Jordan Love here. I've already seen it. Jaden Daniels, obviously, he's had a great rookie season, but it's all been regular season stuff. Haven't seen him in the postseason yet, so I can't say that I trust Jaden Daniels more. But I mean, yeah, guys,
that's
amazing.
The exact right answer. Listen, that's the exact right answer. Anybody that has never started a playoff game, you just don't know how that cauldron's going to impact them. And Jordan Love has played 2 playoff games, played unbelievable in one, and played decent in the other. So there's just more of a proof of concept there.
Yes,
all right,
sir.
next.
Jamal, first time catching the live. I normally listen on Spotify. What do you think the best bet of the year you guys made?
Best bet, I don't know. I mean, there's so many good ones. But I do think us giving out to the audience the Bucks Rams 7-1 division winner bet when they were both underdogs for it is pretty good. Like midway through the year. I like that one a lot.
Yeah,
I mean, I did
solid.
hit a nice same game parlay on my own, but that was, that's separate. All right, next.
Curtis. Actually, Sam, thoughts on the LiAngelo Ball song? Curtis.
I don't have any. I haven't listened to it.
You haven't listened to it? You haven't,
Is it
has
good?
it passed your feed at all?
Algorithms
are probably a little bit different. Oh, okay.
No, I've seen it plenty of times, but is it good?
I've only heard the first that little 20-second snippet, but apparently it's the league's talking. NFL guys are even they're banging it. I think after Dan Campbell's motivational speech to the players, one of the players was like, "Throw that LiAngelo on." After like all the talking,
really?
they played the song.
Oh,
yeah.
Good for him. Oh, maybe I'll listen. I mean, I'm not anti. I'll listen to it.
There's a little follow up there that says, "Which Ball brother do you think will end with the best career?" I mean, it's got to be LaMelo.
I mean, yeah, it'll be LaMelo, even though, but
it
wouldn't surprise me if LaMelo never once makes the playoffs. Because he's going to always have the numbers of a max guy, and if LaMelo's a max guy on your team, I don't know how you're going to be a playoff team. Maybe he'll mature, but maybe not. All right, next.
Curtis says, if the Chiefs three-peat this year, will you be the first to advocate for a four-peat, or will the Broncos and Chargers have caught up enough with the Chiefs to have a say in it?
The Chiefs three-peat, yeah, I'll probably think that they're going to go ahead and keep winning Super Bowls, yeah. But the idea that I'd be worried about the Broncos is laughable. Broncos had a really nice season, and I'm happy for them. But no, I don't think the Broncos or the Chargers are threatening the dynasty as of yet. And I think the Broncos are a ways away, and we'll see how far away the Chargers are. But no, I'm not worried about the Broncos or the Chargers. All right, last one.
Jordan, aside from getting your three-peat pick right, what are you hoping the most to get right about the 2024-2025 NFL playoffs?
That's a really good question. So I just have to take the Chiefs out of it.
You
I'd
incorrect
like the
about the
Rams to
Eagles?
go on a run.
Oh, okay.
I'd like the Rams to go on a run because I feel like even though they're not my pick, I've kind of been, at keeping them in the contender category all year.
Yeah.
I've been talking them up more than most all year, and I'd really, really like to see a Mahomes Stafford Super Bowl. We should have gotten that 3 years ago, and then that second half against the Bengals happened, and we didn't get it. And so I'd like the Rams to go on a run. All right, we'll do our wild card weekend picks on Thursday. Great job, everyone. Great job, Damonza. I'll see you guys on with Colin in 90 minutes on my show in about 3.5 hours. What's right? Hey, thanks for watching. If you're still here, do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the bell so you can be notified when we have new episodes. After you've done that, one more favor, go to your favorite audio platform of choice and subscribe there as well. Don't forget, we're live every Tuesday and Thursday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern-ish, 10:35, 10:40. It sometimes changes, but that's why you hit the bell. You hit the bell so you're notified. You subscribe so we can get to 200,000 followers. We're right around 150,000. We'd love to get to 200,000, get Damonza another plaque. So like, subscribe, rate, send a rating too. Do all that cool stuff. Thanks, guys.